So we're going to go ahead and get started. We're very excited tonight to this morning, not tonight, this morning for our family support webinar, Recipe for a Healthy Home Visit. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and introduce our presenters. We are very excited to have Melissa Udovich and Renee Wakuda with us this morning. And I want to tell you a little bit about them. Melissa is currently a program supervisor for the Parents as Teachers Home Visitation Program at the Family Resource Center in Sheboygan County in Wisconsin. And she was a parent educator and home visitor for 8 years before taking on that role. She has a bachelor's degree in family and consumer education with a minor in health education and a master's degree in professional school counseling. And she is she was a member of a PAT program with their oldest child. So Melissa's also a facilitator for Parenting the Love and Logic Way curriculum and Triple P, and it assists in coordinating free community-wide developmental screens throughout Sheboygan County. Renee has been a parent educator and home visitor with the Family Resource Center in Sheboygan County, Wisconsin since 2004. She and her husband were also participants in the Parents as Teachers home visitation program after the birth of their first child. She's remained passionate in learning and incorporating basic brain development in home visits. And Renee graduated from the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater with a BA in social welfare and maintains state social work licensure. And she embraces collaboration and partners with other community entities to present parent cafes, Triple P, seminars, discussion groups, and Triple P informed workshops. She was one of the founding creators of the Bring Your Own Baby program in Sheboygan County, which is a themed play group that has been active for almost 4 years. So it is my pleasure to welcome Melissa and Renee this morning. Thank you so much for joining us. And you may now get started with your presentation and share your screen. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. We really do appreciate this opportunity. So thank you for having us and for joining us for this morning's session titled Recipe for a Home Visit. So Renee, I'll let you advance to the next slide. There we are. And this is a little bit about us. We are here in Sheboygan. We were just talking about the weather earlier. It's about here feels like 8 degrees when it's like really 15 degrees. So we're nice and chilly. Thank you, Rajel, for the very nice introductions. My name is Melissa Udovich. I am a Parents as Teachers program supervisor here at the Family Resource Center in Wisconsin, Sheboygan County. And you can see on our little map, we are located on that red dot right next to Lake Michigan in eastern Wisconsin. And Renee, I didn't know if you wanted to introduce yourself before you went to the
Oh, sure. Sorry. I'm Renee Wakuda, parent educator, as you heard, for the past 20 years with using the Parents as Teachers curriculum.
Yes.
I
So
cannot do two things at once, obviously.
we're fine. So our plan for our session today is to do our best to include everybody here. Our focus really will be on home visiting with families who have children under the age of 5. Even if you aren't working directly with home visitation with young children, we hope that some of the information we share about brain development will have some sort of impact to you. Also, you'll notice our food themed presentation. Food is something we can all relate with, I feel like. So hopefully our analogies to food and brain development will be helpful to you. Today, we're going to introduce a lot of information about brain development in a short amount of time, but we will do our best to keep you all engaged with activities and discussions. So on this slide, you will notice a cross section of the brain. So for all of those visual learners on screen, we will be talking about the items that are circled. So that would be our limbic system, our corpus callosum, cerebrum, brainstem, and cerebellum. So, and for all those experiential learners in the group, we will have a little exercise to do on screen. So that will kind of demonstrate how the brain works towards the middle of our presentation. Before we go on too much further, these are just some references and where we gathered our presentation materials and our data. We hope that some of these websites or information you might be familiar with. We did grab stuff from the Parents as Teachers curriculum, but also leaned on other sources of information as well. And I think this is a good reminder too. When we work with families, we want to lean on the Parents as Teachers curriculum because it is research-based, but sometimes there's like questions that parents have that we might need to dig a little deeper. And so finding information from reputable resources is always best practice. So just a little plug there. So today, during our session, we will talk about these three our objectives. So first, we're going to take a look at the brain and look at the function and just look at the basics about the brain function in children and how their little brains work. We will use brain concepts to help talk about child development and maybe find a way that we can break that down to help parents understand how the brain works and how child development links together. And then finally, we will provide some opportunities to help parents recognize child development through play. All right. Before we go on, we would like to know kind of like what your comfort level is about brain development. So there's a poll. So where do you stand? Are you the person that would say, I love it, I'm a brainy nerd, I always want to learn more? Or, oh, please, are you kidding me? Let the neuroscientists do that. Or maybe you're comfortable with it, or you want more information because you have no idea what to do or how to share this information. I love it. Look at the information, the results.
I like that there's a couple of people honest with letting the neuroscientists do it.
Nice. So we have a great amount of people, about half of you, that you're a little comfortable with it. The brain development is such a complicated thing, and that's just one of the things that I feel like I can always learn more about. So thank you. That helps us get an idea of where we all stand. Very good information. So next slide.
Whoops.
County.
Let me take that
Not
poll down.
US.
Okay. Oh my goodness.
Just one
Sorry, everybody.
There, one more.
There we go.
Okay. So brain connections, we know that babies are born with billions of brain cells, and these cells are called neurons, and we know that babies learn from experiences. So anytime a child or an infant gains an experience, that connection is built. And when the connection or when that experience is repetitive and repeats, those neuron connections become stronger and stronger. So the more we replicate something for a baby, maybe it's sitting down on my lap and reading, that becomes a very pleasurable experience. Maybe it's building routines around nap time or meal time. Those connections really becomes nice and strong. And those connections, and as an infant and toddler just firing away, those brains are so very active. Did you know that a 2-year-old has more connections than any time of their life? All right, so if you've ever watched a 2-year-old, it's no wonder why they are so busy, those very busy toddlers. The brain typically compensates for connections that are not strongly solidified, and those connections are no longer prominent, and they are pruned. And this process takes place typically after the age of 2. That's why when you look back on your childhood, you're like, I don't have much memory before the age of 2 or whatever, because we don't, those things that are not important for us to remember, they're kind of pruned away. So now Renee is going to talk about the brain and those components that I mentioned earlier, she's going to just jump in and start talking
Yeah.
about those. Are there
All
questions
right.
before we get into the next few slides about the brain?
Okay.
I don't see any chat questions, so I
All
think.
right. Thank you,
Right.
Melissa. Okay. So as Melissa said, I'm gonna dive right into the brain development. So when I talk about each section of the brain, I'm gonna basically talk about its primary function and when it typically is that part of the brain is mature and ready to go. Um, Now, I am not sure if you're able to see my fun walnut up at the top here. So this is because Melissa had said we are doing that food component. Walnut is, to me, one of those perfect brain foods. It actually looks like a brain, so I had to put it up there. It is protected by that shell, which is similar to our skull. So, but we're going to talk about that sweet walnut meat and that brain. So I wanted to also remind everybody, people probably know this, but the brain, even though I'm going to be focusing on one section of the brain at a time, the brain is always working together. It sends messages back and forth within itself through that central nervous system. It receives and gives messages throughout the body at all the times. But it might sound like one part of the brain is only doing one thing at a time, but it is always working together. Okay, so with that all being said, the first part of the brain that I'm going to focus on is the brainstem. The brain does start developing from the bottom up and from the inside out. So that brainstem is located right at the very top of our spine and the back of our head. This is the only part of the brain that is fully developed when a brand new baby, when it's born full term, happens. So the brainstem is responsible for all the things that we don't think about, like our organ function. So our heart rate, our breathing, our body temperature regulation, blood pressure, all of those organ functions, that's what the primary function of that brainstem is. So with a brand new baby being born, they're pretty much good to go. But when we think about premature babies, their brainstem is not finished yet. So we often see preemie babies in isolettes to help regulate their body temperature. They might have Holter monitors to monitor their heart rate and respiration. And then eventually when that preterm baby, when their due date comes, they're usually good to go because that brainstem is finished, which is really kind of cool. So again, brainstem, organ function, that's what that is responsible for. Whoops. Oh my goodness gracious, my computer is very selective. Okay, so the next part of the brain that I'd like to talk about is the cerebellum or midbrain. I like to call it midbrain because midbrain starts with the letter M, and this part of the brain controls muscles. So muscles and midbrain works together in my brain. It also is responsible for balance. The midbrain basically peaks at functioning at around age 2.5. Now, of course, toddlers don't have all the coordination they'll need for the rest of their life, but those basics that the midbrain really practices is peaking at around 2.5. So of course we get more coordination and balance as we go on. When we think about toddlers, they eventually they learn how to jump with both feet off the floor. First they'll do one foot and then the other, and then eventually they can jump with both feet off the floor, and then they can jump forward. But of course, most toddlers can't do a jump up and a forward flip and land back on their feet. That is practice for later. I'm still trying. I wish I could have learned how to do that. Never will. Anyway, so that midbrain, another thing that happens at around that same time, at around age 2.5, is going back to what Melissa said about those neurons. So around age 2.5, a lot of the neurons in our body are covered with myelin. It's a protective fatty coating that helps protect those nerves and helps send instantaneously messages from one part of the nerve to others. So that brain message goes from one part of the body to the next in a flash. Can anybody tell me, come off mute, tell me what happens typically with 2.5-year-olds? What are they learning, or what do parents want them to learn more often than they usually do? Anybody? Okay, I'll just tell you, you guys are being quiet today.
Potty training?
Yes, thank you, Catherine. Potty training, that's exactly the answer I was looking for. A lot of things. Everybody who had another idea, you're probably right. So many things happen at age 2.5, but potty training is the answer that I was looking for, because what's happening is not only does a 2.5-year-old start to have that muscle control, which is part of that midbrain, but those neurons inside their body are solidifying with myelination. So the messages that the kid feels, oh, I have to go potty, my bladder is filling up, they're starting to be able to feel that. So that's an internal midbrain process that we cannot see. So when kiddos are like, I have to go potty while they are going potty in their pants, they can't help it. They literally can't help it. Sometimes parents get frustrated. So we have to share this information with parents. Okay, so midbrain muscle control. The next part of the brain that we're going to be focusing on is the limbic system. This is a major, major part of the brain that is peaking. There's a huge brain burst in toddlerhood, and there's also another brain burst in teenage years. And the limbic system, surprisingly, is our emotional center of the brain. So when we think of toddlers and teenagers, usually the first thing that everybody thinks about is how emotional they are, right? It's very, when you're living with them, it's very emotional. So the limbic system houses our stress response system. So that stress response, even though toddlers might feel that they're in survival mode, hopefully they're not really, but they feel like they are. They go to that flight, fight, and freeze. That is their natural response when things are getting too much for them. Fawning is another survival instinct that I put in parentheses, because fawning typically means a person has the capacity to think how another person is thinking and respond appropriately. So they might say something that will help them survive, or they might have an activity. But toddlers are not able to process how other people are thinking yet at this point in their lives. So they are living in fight, flight, or freeze. The limbic system also is responsible for associative memories. So again, associative memories are strongly, strongly tied to emotions that one is experiencing. If we think back in our lives, if you can think back to, let's say, visiting grandma's house and she made homemade bread or cookies, we can just like smell that right now, right? Or hopefully it's positive. Let's have positive associative memories, but there are negative associative memories too that we all have. So they're very, very, very strong in our limbic system, and it takes a lot to basically control them. Infants and toddlers are not able yet to control their limbic system. They are living in it, so we cannot expect them. They need help self-regulating. So that is why it's so important for infants and toddlers, and all humans actually, to have healthy, positive, consistent relationships with caregivers. That's really important to help them maintain that part of their lives. Okay, next part of the brain is the cerebrum and corpus callosum, two parts of the brain. So the cerebrum is basically what we think about. When we think about that walnut up there, when we think about the brain, it's that whole gray matter. And the brain, the cerebrum has two hemispheres. So each hemisphere has 4 lobes. It has actually many, many other lobes too, but there are 4 main lobes that a lot of people talk about. So those lobes are, for example, I know I won't be able to name all 4 on the spot, but the occipital lobe has to do with vision. The temporal lobe has to do with personality characteristics. Frontal lobe is how we think about things. And of course, I can't think of the 4th lobe right now. I knew I wouldn't be able to, but it's okay. So all those main personality characteristics, recognition of smell, proprioception, that is how someone recognizes where they are in space. So when we, poor little toddlers, they're learning proprioception. When they start to walk, they might be able to literally walk beneath a dining room table and then seemingly they grow overnight, and then they walk beneath the dining room table and clunk the top of their head because they're realizing they can't see from their eyebrows to the top of their head. They've grown and now they bang their head, but they learn associative memory. They learn that, oh my gosh, and parents are like, duck down, crawl, so you don't hit your head. So that proprioception is there for that cerebrum. Okay, so the corpus callosum, that is a connective tissue that connects both hemispheres of the brain together. When babies are first born, they are getting visual input from each side of their brain. So a baby might look, one eye might go that way, one eye go that way, and those eyeballs are going everywhere. The brain isn't able to connect them and send messages from one hemisphere of the brain to the other. So we know that corpus callosum is starting to work when those babies' eyes are moving together. And that's really something kind of fun to tell parents. Our brain is really miraculous for so many reasons, and we don't realize that our eyes are they're getting two different messages. So even as adults, we ignore some messages, like right now, our brain has learned to ignore the nose on our face, right? And now we can all see the nose on our face because I called attention to it. But that's not important information for our brain to know all the time. So our brain knows I'm going to look outwards and ignore the nose on my face. But that's both hemispheres working together. Another fun way that we know that corpus callosum is working and connecting both hemispheres, the hemispheres of our brain, is when babies are starting to reach out with intention and cross midline, because that information is going from one half of the brain to the other, and that they're able to cross over to midline and reach across their body. Also important when they're learning to walk, to use both parts of their body, or both halves of their body. Okay. Now is the cerebral cortex. Hang in there, everybody. This is a wild brain ride, I know. The cerebral cortex is that thinking, logical, and reasoning part of the brain. It's a thin tissue that covers the entire cerebrum. So it goes in and out of all of those folds when we think about that whole brain surface. It has the ability to reason and compromise, use critical thinking. It controls the emotions. So this part of the brain does not actually fully develop until the mid to late 20s. So when we tell a teenager or a toddler to calm down, they literally cannot do that yet. So they need help. And that's the importance of that wonderful, responsive, supportive caregiver. The limbic system is also, the cerebral cortex, the cerebral cortex is also responsible for factual memory. So that factual memory starts at around age 2, and that's why we see 2-year-olds are beginning to be able to recognize and identify colors and shapes and all of those facts in our lives, or in their lives. Okay, how's everybody doing? This was a lot. I zipped through very quickly. It's a lot. Okay, so now we're going to when Melissa said we're going to do something for the experiential learners, whoops, we're going to play a game. If I can get my computer to behave. Oh dear. Come on. Oh well.
Yes. While you're figuring that out, I see that there's a hand raised.
Oh, good.
And let me see. Who might that have been? Is there a question?
Go ahead, Sheila.
Yeah,
she just unmuted.
Okay.
Yeah, I just because it popped in my head. So if you're talking about like the brainstem and automatic functions, kind of like breathing and stuff, does that also control digestion?
By what? I'm sorry?
Does the brainstem also control digestion?
Digestion. Oh, thank you. I was not hearing that word. Yes, I believe so. I should have made the disclaimer that I am not a neuroscientist. But I think it is, because that is, anybody who knows the answer, please correct me, but it is that organ function, because we don't think about it. So I think digestion is one of those things, and the whole digestive system does take an infant like a year to fully develop. That's why we can't feed them steak. because their system isn't able to. So I believe so, but if I am wrong, please correct me on that. That would
All
be
right, well,
great.
I might look it up because I didn't know if it'd be brainstem or like a muscle,
I
which one
know.
would fall under. So I
That's
might look it up. Thank you.
I'm just totally 100% guessing that the digestive system is brainstem, but that muscle control when kiddos are able to hold their bowels and their urine and release, that's the midbrain.
Okay.
And the midbrain also is basically right on top of, if not included in the brainstem. So it's really right, they work so closely together. But I don't know for sure the answer.
That's all right. It was just one of the weird things that popped in my head when you were talking. So
Oh, I do that all the time. Okay.
thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you for asking. Next, okay, we are going to play a brains charades activity. And don't worry, if you are somebody who's like, I do not want to be on camera, I don't want to talk, you do not have to, but I'd still like you to participate in the privacy of your own space. And for those of you who do want to participate, please, we'll just take a couple of examples after each of these. So what we're going to do is the objective is we're going to create a human demonstration of all the functions of the main areas of the brain that I talked about. So you're going to act like the part of the brain. I'm going to show you one section of the brain at a time, review it, so it's not a test, not a quiz. And then I'd like you to act it out as I label it. So do your best impersonation just for a couple of seconds. All right. So the first part of the brain that we talked about is the brainstem. And remember, that is basic organ function. And thank you, Sheila, for refreshing us on that. So one of the things that I'd like you can think of any organ that you want and act it out. Okay, or you can say it. So you could like form the heart with your hands and just go thump, 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 thump. You could pretend you were lungs and move your hands and breathe. So just think of an organ, and I'm going to count down from 3, and I want everybody to do it. 3, 2, 1, go. Yay! Okay, I see lots of cool things happening. Did anybody do anything new? I'd like just if 2 people could just come off mute, tell us what kind of organ you pretended you were or acted out. Anyone?
I pretended to breathe in and out, like the expansion of the lungs. Babies aren't, going, hey, don't forget to breathe over here.
Excellent.
Don't drown
Yep.
on land. Right?
Love it.
That's the one I did as well.
Good. Good. Fantastic. I am doing the bladder and doing the potty dance. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. Next, midbrain. That's that muscle control. So we're gonna do one thing that represents how you intentionally control your muscles, and you can repeat it. So if you need to stand up, go ahead and stand up, jump up and down. You can sit and clap your hands, snap your fingers. Ready? Think of a muscle. Go. 3, 2, 1. Cool, cool, cool. Oh, I see lots of action. All right, do 2 people want to come off of mute and tell us what you did? No?
Head,
Okay.
shoulders, knees, and toes.
Excellent! Love it!
And not poking yourself in the eye when you go to the head, right?
Yeah, you're using your proprioception skills. All right. Our next one, I want you to get emotional. I want you to just shout out or tell us all how you feel. Tell yourselves. Don't say it so loud that your neighbors call 988 for your mental health, but just like get emotional. Think of an emotion that you're feeling or use a facial expression to demonstrate how you're feeling, however loudly you feel it. Like, okay, 3, 2, 1, go. Nice. Awesome. All right. Does anyone want to come off of mute and tell us how you feel?
I did disgust the I don't want to eat that, you can't make me eat that face that little babies do when they're not quite sure about foods.
That's perfect. Love it. Anybody else?
Oh, no, 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 no.
Great, great. That's wonderful. All right. Now, the cerebral cortex. Again, that is that logical, calming part of the brain. And really, it really helps to calm that limbic system. And again, that part of the brain is not fully developed until the late 20s. So when somebody says calm down, if somebody tells me to calm down, I have some other things to tell them because I am not going to respond to someone else telling me to calm down. I have to do it myself. I can get reminders. So if somebody takes a deep breath and just kind of demonstrates that I need to calm down, that works so much better for me. And that is how toddlers are too. We can't just tell them to calm down because they literally cannot. So one of the fun mantras that I like to say when I think about the cerebral cortex is just think and solve, calm and resolve, because that's really what it does. It thinks about why we are being so emotional, why we're being responsive to that situation. It tries to solve problems. It tries to calm us down and resolve the situation. So that's kind of what that cerebral cortex does. Or if you need to calm yourself down for this fun brain charades game, you can repeat your own favorite mantra, something that you say to yourself to make you calm down, or doing those deep breathing exercises. There's so many of those out there, but basically you breathe in through your nose, you hold it for 7 seconds, you breathe in for a count of 4, hold for 7 seconds, and then exhale out of your mouth for the count of 8. When you do this, it literally does it sends out calming hormones in your brain, and it kind of scooches away those stress hormones. So this really does change your whole chemical system within your brain. One fun way, because little toddlers are not able to do this yet, one really cool way to help teach them, if, by the way, they're not to that point of no return when they are screaming and nothing but you just have to ignore them kind of at that point. But if you can catch a toddler when they're ramping up to being really upset, one thing you can do is you can have this little tool, which is a popsicle stick, and you can dip that one end of the popsicle stick into like lavender essential oil, something calming, and then you tape a feather onto the other end of that popsicle stick. So when you can see them amping up, you run and get your popsicle stick. You can keep it in your back pocket if you live with toddlers, but you have them smell the lavender. You can draw a little flower if you want. You have them smell that, and then you slowly tip that popsicle stick upside down and let them blow on the feather. So they're doing something physical. You're telling them what to do. You say, okay, smell the flower. Now I'm going to turn over. Now blow on the feather. And that will help them with this exercise. They don't know they're doing something. And toddlers like to do things. They like to have something constructive to do, but they don't know they're helping their brain that much. Okay, how is that for everybody? That was our brain charades. You can play it live if you want. Just email me and let me know. All right, Melissa. Melissa, are you still there?
I'm
Okay.
here. I'm here. I just noticed in the chat that before our activity, Sheila asked that great question about digestion. And thank you, Amber, who Googled real quickly. And she said, according to Google, yes, the brainstem is the part of the brain that primarily is responsible for controlling digestion. So
I love this team.
thank you, Amber, for checking that really quickly for us. That was very helpful. So, all right. So then now we just had that activity that allowed us to think about the different components of the brain and how it all works. And now what I want to do is just take a moment and look at the brain development from 2 different perspectives. One, the perspective of the nut being cracked, and then of the nutcracker. So if we visualize the brain as a nut, as we've been talking about all along, its sweet spot inside is the skull, or the part of the brain. And so when outside pressures and long-term or toxic stress are present, brains don't function like those that have not had that long-term and toxic stress. Essentially, the brain structures and the connections have changed in the result of this toxic stress. And so sometimes we see that in personalities that can be perceived as very difficult. If you haven't had the opportunity to attend or listen to any trauma-informed care principles, we would recommend it. It's just a really great way to think of how much a brain can be shifted or that development changes slightly because of toxic stress. So let's think now about the Nutcracker in a different way. Have you ever heard of the expression, she's a hard nut to crack? This means that we just can't get through to them. Maybe they're stuck in their ways. They won't change. They can't change. They're unwilling to change. Maybe they're perceived as being very stubborn. When we work with people who are hard nuts to crack, we don't want to crack them. Instead, we only have control over our responses, our actions, and our thoughts, and we want to meet them where they're at. So sometimes it's hard to work with families who have experienced trauma or toxic stress. And so, at least at our agency, and I think PAT overall really suggests to share and get help, talk to your reflective supervisor, your coworkers, and other mental health support people, to find a way to, work with people that might be hard nuts to crack. And always remember to take care of yourself first, so that you are able to work with people who might be experiencing trauma. On the next slide, we will see kind of what's on the menu as far as child development is concerned. And so while we work with families, one of our roles is to help families understand their child's development. Now, we've just looked at all that brain development, and now how does that relate to child development? And so we know that child development is measured by milestones in like communication, motor skills, cognitive learning, social and emotional awareness. So I have a picture of a milestone chart that many of us might have seen before in the Parents as Teachers curriculum. And so we as home visitors are looking for these things, right? We're looking for advances in child development. And we want to help parents find ways to engage in activities with their child to promote this development. And we want parents to understand and have those reasonable expectations and to connect reasonable expectations around their child's development due to their brain development. And we can help parents, therefore, understand some of those scaffolding skills that are needed. So, for instance, a child needs to roll before he can scoot. Scooting eventually leads to hands and knees, crawling, then pulling to our feet, balancing, and then walking. And sometimes parents are like, I just want my child to walk. We're like, well, what can we do? Like, we need to help parents understand there are skills that need to evolve before that. Sometimes parents are like, we're going to skip crawling and go right to walking. And, is that realistic? Is that how the brain operates? No, there's those scaffolding skills. So we want to help parents understand those as well. And that's part of how the brain works with child development. So one way we can help parents monitor their child's development is through developmental screens. And many of us use some sort of tool to help parents understand and help parents track that development. In our agency, we use the Ages and Stages questionnaire. And it's really important for parent educators or home visitors to understand the intent behind the questions so they can explain the screening questions to the parents. Sometimes parents don't understand what the question is asking, where we as screeners know that there is an intent behind those questions. So then we can catch and watch for milestones being met, but also we can notice when there's delays. And sometimes it's difficult to address milestones with caregivers when there is a delay. And so when home visitors can meet the child where they're at and help parents witness advances, this is really powerful. And when we observe child development, and we know a little bit about brain development, and we can make those observations to parents, this is really helpful for parents to see that progression. Because when you're with a child all day, every day, it's hard to sometimes see that progression without it being pointed out to you. So let me see, what else? Understanding the intent, I think, is really important to help parents understand the developmental milestones. So, and then next, Renee is going to talk a little bit about enhancing the home visits with a little bit of flavor.
Yep. Okay. So, home visitors, people that are visiting folks in their own home, you may be the only positive person that family has in their lives. So you are that entree. You're bringing your professionalism, your personality, and your knowledge. And that's really, really important, because you're the star of the hour, even though they really are, but they look forward to those visits usually. So you're that entree. We also want to give families the dessert. We want to give them the sweets that they deserve. This is a time when we want that dessert to be all throughout the whole entire visit, throughout the meal. We don't want to wait till the end. And we want that dessert to be genuine. We want to give those positive accolades. Every family has strengths. And when you come into a home visit with a strengths-based attitude, that is evident. They pick up on that. They know it. Let's give them real, genuine sugar. We're not going to have sucralose or aspartame, or however you say that. We're not going to have that fake sugar. We want real. Give them, give that genuine praise that all people need. We also want to leave them wanting more. We're going to give them appetizers for that next visit. So we want to have, even though we come in with our own agendas, no matter what program you're from or use, we all have to do our jobs, and where there's a reason that we're there. But we can include families a lot more than we might think we can. So if there's a skill that that you kind of see that, oh, I would like to work on that skill with this child and that family, and I want to teach that the adults in that child's life, I want to teach them how to work with their child. We can just mention, we can say, is there anything that you're seeing that you want to work on next time? Or there are activities that you want to. I have 2 ideas. You said you wanted to work on walking. I have 2 activities. Which one would you like me to bring? So you're still making that final choice, but you're allowing them to fine tune the choice. So let's, make sure we can do that. One of the main things that home visitors have to have that ability to do is to think on the spot and adapt to change. Our agendas might change. How many of you have had that situation? You're putting your coat on, you have made the next visit, you have your hand on the doorknob, and all of a sudden they drop a bomb on you, and you're like, oh my goodness. And you're thinking you have to make a flash decision. You have to decide, do I come back in and address this bomb that they just gave me? They just told me this huge, huge thing that has a massive impact on their lives. Or do I say, you know what, how about if I call you later? I'll check in with you. So you have to adapt and think. It's hard. We are humans. And I know I'm tempted just to turn around and say, oh, how can I help you? That's not really what the family always needs. We can, give them resources, and it's up to them to make those changes. And then that being said, our mental and physical presence is the most important thing that we can bring to a family. So if we are not in a good headspace, if we have something going on in our personal lives, and we're just not able to be there for that family, it's okay. We need to adapt, contact your supervisor, talk it over with your supervisor, and reschedule. Because those families are going to know that we're not there for them that day. So just a little reminder there. Okay, so setting the table for retention. So in addition to all the wonderful things that we as home visitors bring to that family, that is in and of itself a great retention skill. So we also want to recognize culture. Culture isn't just one's ethnicity. Every family has a different culture. But recognize culture. Ask about cultures if you don't understand or want to know more. And and you can always say, I know I might be nosy, but can you tell me more? Usually people really appreciate that. Also recognize who's in their family and whom do the parents want to be involved in the visits. If you're sitting on the floor with the parent and another person walks in and sits behind you, position your body so that you are welcoming, you are perceiving a welcoming atmosphere to everyone in the household. If you have two-parent households, include both parenting partners in the text reminders for the visits, scheduling visits. It's just be welcoming. I know this is all common sense. I probably don't even have to have this slide for everybody, but retention is a great thing, and we want to retain families. Does anyone else have any retention ideas that you're like, oh, this has worked for me? Anyone? I know we're running out of time already. Okay, if you have retention ideas, please put it in the chat. That would be great.
So I don't know about any of you, but whenever we would have holidays, we would always have, the adult table and the kids table. And the kids table was always very simplistic. Like there's not even butter or salt on the table. It is just a spot for the kids to sit that's low and easy for them to reach. So when talking about what is it the kids need? Well, they don't need a lot from us, right? Kids are really entertained by looking at their caregiver's face and simple toys. They will want to engage in the interactions of the parent more than anything else, more than any screen. A baby's brain isn't designed to understand or break down the information coming from a screen. So that person-to-person interaction is so important. So a parent spending time with their child is the most simplistic and easiest thing to help engage child development and help meet milestones. The more complex the toy, the simple the learning, the simplistic the learning happens. So the more simplistic the toy, the more complex the learning. So balls, books, blocks, and puzzles are all things our educators tend to have an activity around in their home visiting bag. And so if a child is done with the parent-child interaction, let's bring out a ball and see what they do. Let's bring out a puzzle. So those are great simplistic activities. And we just want to allow the child to explore, problem solve, and just play. How many of you, I know I have 2 kids of my own, and every Christmas they get so many things, but what do they love to do is play with the big empty boxes, right? The simplistic toys. All right. And then Renee is going to talk a little bit about what is actually happening, what is actually learning about.
Okay, so these are all common terms that as home visitors, we can help teach parents these terms of what their child is learning by interacting with any of the toys that they're playing with or any activity that they're doing. So we can, and these are nice open-ended questions that you can propose to parents. So some of these things are proprioception seems to be my favorite word of the day today, but teaching parents what that means, or receptive communication. What do you think your baby is thinking and understanding from the words that you're saying? How does your baby express themselves, whether it's verbally or cues that they're giving you? Look at how he's solving that problem. He's learning that tennis ball does not fit inside that bottle, but he's trying. So these are just nice common terms. And now I'd like you to think about all of the things that we've learned. And when we bring an activity into the house or there's a toy that a child is playing with, I want to have you think back to what you've learned and what part of the brain is primarily activated. So this, in case you can't tell what it is a beach ball with a string attached to the plug. And when we hold a beach ball above a baby, what part of the brain do you think is primarily activated? Or we're holding it above a toddler. What do you think? There's no wrong answers because all of the brain is working together. But what do you think is the primary part of the brain that we talked about? Is it the brainstem, basic organ function, midbrain muscle control, the emotional part of the brain, that limbic system, or the cerebrum is the whole brain? So of course that's, but what do you think? Anyone? If anyone said midbrain, that's the part I was looking for, because the baby isn't, they see it, they intentionally are reaching out for it, even if they have a paper towel tube and they're batting at it, that is that midbrain in action. They're crossing over from one part of their body to the other, they're crossing midline, so that's it. The next activity that I'd like you to think about, what part of the brain is primarily activated? This is what in Parents as Teachers we call an I Spy bottle. It's simply a bottle with salt inside and some random objects. There's like a crayon, a toy frog. I think there's a marble underneath the frog. It's really hard to see. But what part of the brain do you think is primarily activated? I'm going to do a double question with if a toddler is playing with this. Anyone? All right.
Gloria says midbrain.
Oh, good. I can't see the chat, so thank you.
Yep, I'll read them too. We have midbrain, cerebrum.
Perfect. Yes, both, because for the kiddos who have factual memory, they're saying, oh, that is a frog. That looks like a frog. It doesn't look like a real frog, but it's a frog and a crayon. So, yep, that's that cerebrum and the cerebral cortex. Why I didn't put cerebral cortex on the slide, I apologize, but that should have been on there. And then that midbrain, yes, they have that muscle control. They're able to shake it around. Very, very good. And then the last one, what is happening here? What is the primary function, or what system? I just cheated and gave you the answer that I was looking for, but what part of the brain is primarily activated when there's a caring adult, positive physical interaction, they're doing something together? What part of the brain is activated?
Yeah, limbic.
Excellent. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Yep, that positive interaction, they're sitting close together, they're both happy and content. And okay, little trick question. What part of the brain, if they were sitting apart, like if it was a teacher reading a book?
Oh.
So that would be that cerebral cortex, because it's factual. It's also a little bit of limbic, but they're more listening. They have to be responsive, but there's not that close physical, wonderful interaction. So parents reading is fantastic. All right. I know, I'm so sorry. We're zipping through the end here, but now it's time to take another survey. After hearing our presentation, how do you now feel about talking with parents about their child's brain development? I'm still a brainy nerd, can't wait to share what I've learned. I'm still not a neuroscientist, so I'll let them do their job. I'm more comfortable than I was at the beginning of this presentation, and I'm still not confident that sharing brain development, but at least now I have some ideas of what to say. Wonderful.
Wow.
All right, it looks like everybody answered, and a lot of people are more comfortable, so that is wonderful. A couple of people still aren't neuroscience. How could you possibly get your degree in neuroscientist in an hour? Of course not. So this is really good, but it looks like everybody has learned a little bit. So wonderful, wonderful. All righty, I am just going to, every time I open up a poll, I lose where I was. Okay. And we will share our results. Stop sharing. Excellent. Okay. Does anyone have any questions? Sorry, we really flew through the end here. If you have questions, here's our contact information. if you would like us to share the slides with you, please email us and we would be happy to do that. And check out our website. We have lots of cool videos. I did do a potty learning video during COVID. So that works out really well because when parents need it, they can just click on a button and watch a little class. It's not as brain development heavy as this one was, but anyway. But we really, really, really appreciate the ability to be here. Anyone have any questions? And thank you so much for all you do. I wish we could have actually come to Pennsylvania. That would have been fun.
Be careful
Yes.
what you ask for. We'll be asking you to come to something.
I
Well,
think that would be, I've been through Pennsylvania. It's beautiful.
well, this was wonderful. Thank you so much for being with us today and sharing your information. This was a wonderful presentation that I got to see at the PAT National Conference, and I was like, oh, we need to get them to do a webinar. This was great. So just a few reminders for folks. Please complete the survey that's going to go out. Our next webinar will be on May 7th, and it's going to have to do with engaging fathers and male caregivers. If you have any questions, you can reach out to Renee and Melissa. Thank you again. I do see that there's one question about how to access the potty training video. I think if you go to the link that I put in the chat, I did put the Family Resource Center. You said it's on your website.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes,
Okay.
and we do have two different programs. We have parenting and a literacy council. So if you go under the parenting support section.
Got it. Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you so much again. And everyone, we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Don't forget to complete that evaluation, and that'll be sent out soon. And the recording will be posted when it's been processed. Thank you so much again, Renee and Melissa, and everyone. Please have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.
Everyone, I appreciate it. Thanks.